welcome back to another episode. This is your host, Shani Marie, and I'm glad you all are here. Today, I want to talk about growth and not the cute version of growth, not the version that we post where everything looks so peaceful, everybody understands us, and we're becoming this amazing new person. No, I'm talking about the uncomfortable sides of growth because everybody says they want to grow, right? Everybody says that they want a better relationship, they want better friendships, they want better communication, better finances, better families, and better lives, right? But are we actually ready for the growth and what growth requires? Because growth requires accountability. And I talk about accountability all the time. And growth requires uncomfortable conversations and it requires emotional maturity. Let that sink in. Emotional maturity. And sometimes growth really looks, when you look at yourself and say, maybe I was wrong. Maybe the way how I reacted wasn't okay. Maybe I need to listen instead of automatically defending myself. Maybe I need to stop making decisions when I'm emotional. It's coming from a place of where I am. I'm a very emotional person. So I had to look at myself, and maybe it's not about what the other person needs to change. Maybe there's something about me that I need to change too. And that's hard because sometimes we become so comfortable with who we've always been that we didn't even realize certain behaviors aren't actually who we are. They're what we learned, right? And sometimes I think God allows us to see these things because He's trying to show us we can't come, what comes with the next version of ourselves. Sometimes we're praying, and we ask God, change my life, change me, change my situation, take me somewhere different, bring me into a new season. And God is saying to us, okay, but there are some things that, that we have to work on too, that you got to work on too, because you can't keep asking God for a new season while fighting and holding on to every habit, every action, every mindset from your old ones. Sometimes the growth that you're praying for requires God to reveal things about yourself that didn't even realize that it was needed to be changed. And sometimes to understand what needs to change, you have to look back at where it all started. Sometimes you have to look back at where it all started. A lot of things that we carry into adulthood starts long before we even realized that we're coming from patterns. It started from home. Think about it. How did your family communicate? How did they handle conflict? Was there yelling? Was there silence? Did people actually apologize after something? Were there feelings that we could actually talk about? Was there affection shown? How was money handled? How were children being disciplined? How were they not? How did the women of the family handle relationships or situations, and how did the men? Even if that was a thing. What did marriage look like to you? Did you even see marriage? What did love look like to you? Did you even see love? What did forgiveness look like to you? Because when you're a child, you're not sitting there analyzing these things. No, you're just watching, you're observing, you're eventually, and what that eventually does is it's what you see over and over and over again starts to seem like it's feeling normal, and that is what it is. And then you grow up, and then you leave home, you leave the nest, and then you start having your own relationships. And then maybe you might even have children. Then maybe you might even get married. Maybe you start building your own home, your own life. And then suddenly, you start seeing things differently. You catch yourself reacting to certain things and you think to yourself and say, wait, where did I get that from? And sometimes you realize, oh, that's how I was raised. Oh, this is who I am. And that argument that happens in the house always used to happen like this, and how we dealt with our emotions happened like this, and how we dealt with discipline and how I was disciplined as a child, this is how I'm going to deal with this now, and how I handled disagreements, this is how I'm going to deal with this now. And now that I have to make that decision, do I continue the same pattern that I know, or do I say it stops at me? So we're breaking patterns that, doesn't mean that we want to say that we hate our family. I really want us to sit back and think to ourselves, because this is really important. Choosing, do I do something differently from my parents? Does it automatically mean that, my parents were horrible? No. Sometimes our parents were just doing the best that they could, and it's all they knew. Right? And now all that they knew is carrying into how we move as parents too. So what their parents knew came from a generation before them. And that's how it's called generational patterns. They travel until somebody realizes them and says, am I going to beat that change? Somebody decided to change them, and so I'm going to do that. You can love your mother and say, I want a mother that's different. You can love your father and say, I want communication differently. You can even look at it and say, like, you can appreciate everything that your family did for you, while recognizing that the things that you don't want to carry moving forward into the next generation. You can love, and you can love where you came from, but it doesn't mean that you have to repeat the cycle of where it came from. And I think sometimes people feel guilty about that. I did. I know I did. And, you're not disrespecting your upbringing by growing beyond certain parts of it. No, that's what growth is supposed to do. And sometimes God isn't just asking you to dishonor where you came from. He's asking you to have enough wisdom to recognize what should continue and what shouldn't. And when your growth makes other people uncomfortable, this is the crazy part. And here's another part here. Nobody really talks about that. Nobody. Sometimes we're just, when you're just sitting there and you're starting to look at yourself and trying to change the people closest to you, you don't know how to receive the new version of them, and they don't know how to receive the new version of you. They only just remember the old you, and you remember the old them. And then they remember what you used to tolerate. They remember how easy I could get a reaction out of you. They remember when you didn't even have any boundaries, if you think about it. And then they remember that all you said was yes to everything. Yes, this, yes, that. Never knew the word no. And they remember that when you explain yourself over and over and over again, you don't have to explain yourself to nobody. And when you start saying no, when you start protecting your peace, when you start engaging in certain, or not even stop engaging in certain conversations and certain arguments, when you start saying, I don't want to communicate like this anymore, suddenly people start to think that you changed. And you know what? Maybe you have. And that is the point. Growth is change. I don't want to be exactly who I was 5 years ago. I don't even want to be the same person I was last year. No. I want to learn. I want to mature. I want to grow. I want to become more self-aware. I don't want to be as emotional, not have emotional maturity. I want to be different. I want to respond differently. I want God to continue working on the parts of me that still needs work. Because every day's work, and the people who love me have allowed me to have room to be the new person I'm becoming. Because sometimes people are more comfortable with the version of you that they could predict. They knew what it would look like when they argued with you. They knew what you would tolerate. They knew what buttons to sit down and push. And when those buttons stop working, suddenly you're different. Quote unquote, you're different. Yes, I'm supposed to be different. I'm supposed to be. Everybody doesn't deserve the same access to you. I always talk about that. And growth also teaches you something else. Just because somebody knows you from a long time ago or knows you from back in the day, whatever it could be, doesn't automatically mean that they deserve to have unlimited access to you. And yes, that's including family. Family is important. Don't get it twisted. Love your family. I love mine to the core. Respect your family. I do. But boundaries don't suddenly become unnecessary because somebody shares blood with you. No. Sometimes the healthiest thing that you could do is to change the level of access somebody has to you, right? That doesn't always mean cutting people off. You don't have to cut nobody off. Sometimes it's simply saying, I love you, but I can't participate in this anymore and I'm going to pull back. I love you, but we're not going to speak to each other like that no more. I love you, but I'm not explaining this decision 10 times. And I love you, but this is how I'm choosing to raise my children. I love you, but I'm building something different. Just because you guys are all in the same village doesn't mean you have to act like the same village, because knowing me doesn't automatically give you permission to disrespect me. Being related doesn't mean I have to abandon every boundary that I created for myself. And having history with me doesn't mean that you get to hold me hostage to the person I used to be. And I think that's something that that's something that we struggle with sometimes, because we think love is unlimited access, and it isn't. It doesn't. And you can love somebody and still recognize that this relationship needs boundaries, right? You can forgive somebody and still change their access to you. You can pray for somebody and still recognize that you cannot continue participating in the same unhealthy cycle with them. But growth always requires looking at yourself first. Now, here's where I don't want us pointing the finger at everybody else, because it's very easy to listen to something about growth and immediately think to yourself, yup, that's my mother, yup, that's my father, that's my sister, that's my brother, that's my friend, that's my ex. But no, no, before you send this episode to somebody, ask yourself this question: where do I need to grow? Because sometimes we're waiting for everybody around us to change while refusing to look at ourselves and change ourselves. I used to do this. I was always pointing the fingers, and sometimes we're praying, God fix them, God change them, God make them understand. Meanwhile, you might be trying to look and you might be showing, he might be showing us that it's something about ourselves. And maybe it's our delivery, maybe it's our attitude, maybe if it's our pride or our ego, maybe it's the inability to sit down and apologize. Maybe it's the way that we communicate when we're angry. Maybe it's just us, and we need to continue to mature our relationships to respond maturely. You cannot ask for healthy communication while refusing to listen. You cannot ask people to respect your feelings while dismissing theirs. And you cannot say you're breaking generational patterns while refusing accountability when somebody tells you that you hurt them. Sometimes growth sounds like I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that. And I understand why that hurt you. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And then actually changing that behavior. Because an apology without changed behavior eventually becomes another pattern. And that's something I've understood and understand about growth. It's not just that recognizing what everybody else needs to work on. It's being willing to let God show you you. And sometimes that is the hardest part. Think about what you're passing down to your kids, to generation. And this is where I think that about the next generation is, what are our children learning from watching us? Because they're watching the same way that we were watching, right? And they're learning how adults communicate. They're learning how or what love looks like, and they're learning what conflicts looks like. And they're also learning how to regulate emotions and how to apologize. And also, I feel like they're learning what boundaries look like. And if you're growing up in a place that you don't understand what that is, or that was never into place, you're going to continue into that cycle, into everything that you were doing. And I think they're also learning who we are in relationships. And they're eventually going to have their relationships. That's why breaking generational patterns matters so much. Maybe growing up, maybe how you grew up in a household, nobody apologized to children. You can change that. Maybe feelings weren't even talked about, but you can change that. And maybe everybody yelled when they were angry or wanted to get their point across, but you can change that. Maybe problems were ignored until everybody pretended nothing happened. I grew up like this, and it wasn't fun. And it took my kids to sit down and tell me and say, have to be real and transparent. My kids told me, Mom, I don't want you yelling. I hate when you yell, it hurts. Even when they're doing something wrong to me, I feel like they're doing something wrong. It's like, bro, this is how we get our point across. So it's how you want to raise your children. And if your children can tell you, hey, something is wrong, that should be your goal. How can I give the next generation something even better? Because I don't want my children to have to heal from something simply because I refuse to heal within myself. I want them to start looking further ahead. Not because I'm like this perfect parent. I'm not. None of us are. Nobody's perfect. But because once you know better, you have opportunities to choose differently. Somebody has to do it first. Generational patterns, breaking generational patterns may feel lonely because you're the first person doing it. You're the first person setting boundaries, the first person going to therapy, the first person talking about their emotions, the first person just apologizing to your children, the first person saying, we don't have to communicate this way. You're the first person deciding that dysfunction doesn't have to be normal just because it's familiar. And when you're the first person, people might not understand you. They might call you sensitive. They might call you and tell you that, oh, you changed. They might tell you that you're doing too much because somebody is out there and is willing to do it first. And maybe that's you. And maybe God is choosing you to be the one who sees it. Not because you're better than the generations before you, or because everybody before you is doing it wrong, or maybe because God gave you awareness. That's what. Because you were the one who is supposed to do something different within it. He didn't just show you the pattern so that you could blame people before you. He showed you because you're finally in a position to change it. And that's a different way on how to look at generational patterns that are breaking. Instead of asking, why did I have to grow up like this? Maybe sometimes the first question becomes with God, what are you asking me to do differently now that I see it? Because awareness comes with responsibility. Once you see the pattern that you have chosen and that you have to choose, you can keep repeating it. And you can start by doing the work to change it. And there's another side to this conversation too. If you were asking people to allow us to grow, right? We have to grow with people too. Sometimes somebody hurt you and it may be years ago and you're still reacting with them or interacting with them. And that could have been 5 years ago of who the person that you were. And sometimes somebody made a mistake when you were younger, and we've decided that that's who they are forever. And if you're asking for grace while becoming, we have to be willing to recognize growth in other people too, and realize that people change. It doesn't mean forgetting what happened or what they did or how they reacted with you or yelled or whatever. It doesn't mean removing your boundaries. It doesn't mean everybody automatically gets access to you again. It just simply means recognizing that people can change, because imagine doing all of this work on yourself and only for everybody around you to keep introducing you as the person that you used to be. That used to happen to me. And none of us want that. So, yes, protect yourself, have boundaries, pay attention to actions, and leave room for people to become too. So, if you're in a season where you feel like you're changing, where things or certain conversations don't interest you anymore, when your environment doesn't feel right anymore, certain behaviors don't sit well with you anymore, don't automatically assume something is wrong. Just you're growing. Maybe it's just you're growing. Maybe God is doing something different in your life that you don't even completely understand yet. But to be completely honest, He's showing you what belongs in the next season, what belongs in the next generation, and what doesn't. But while you're growing, stay humble enough to keep checking yourself too. Check yourself too. Because growth isn't about believing you've become a better than everybody around you. Growth is to be able to recognize I'm not who I used to be, and I'm not finishing with becoming the person or the woman that God is calling me to become. Give other people room to grow, give yourself room to grow, and stop allowing people to hold you hostage of the old versions of yourself simply because the version they're most comfortable with isn't that person anymore. So when it comes to your family members, you can love them. You can love where you came from without repeating everything that it came with. And you can appreciate your upbringing and still choose differently. You can forgive and still have boundaries. You can love people and still change access to you. But if this resonates with you, share this, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you on another episode of This Is H.E.R. Once again, it's your host, Chanié. Peace and love.